Welcome to the Counselling Armchair, hosted by the counselling team at RMIT University. This podcast aims to help you manage your university life so you can be at your best. We'll be sharing with you tips on student life here and ways to enhance your mental well-being.
Hi and Happy New Year from the Counselling Armchair, everyone. Hope you all tuned in to our previous episode to do some looking after yourself during this time while the weather has been warm and pleasant. We are kicking off this month with a chat with a couple of guests from a different team at RMIT. So I want to introduce Catherine and Katie from the RMIT Student Welfare Team. Hello to you both.
Hi. Hello.
So now we enjoy getting to know our guests a little bit beforehand. I might start with you, Catherine, if that's okay. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and or your time at RMIT?
Sure. I'm the Manager of Student Support. I've been at RMIT for about 12 and a half years now.
Oh, wow.
It's been an amazing journey, and although I've stayed within the same team and area of support services, the job has evolved and changed over the year and always remained really interesting and exciting as the university has grown and changed, and internationally, globally, as we've dealt with issues. So I manage teams that help people either one-to-one or in groups for everyday questions through to really significant life events when people need help and support. So it's a pleasure to see students at the start of their journey at RMIT, to be there for them when they really need some support, and to see them graduate. It's a wonderful opportunity. And of course, working with all the other specialists at RMIT, whether they're professional, like the other support services in the colleges and in the city of Melbourne, and even internationally, the opportunity to rub shoulders with other professionals in student support means that our reach can be greater and I can do my job better. And I feel really lucky to
You must know
work.
your job very well, having been in the team for 12 years and then
Yes.
probably have had a lot of input into how to best support students.
Absolutely, really proud to be part of some really big projects and have the opportunity to work with, well, particularly my teams, to change the way that we work and to listen to students and hear from people in industry and make sure that we're doing the best we can every day in big ways and in those one-to-one environments too.
Oh, what a great intro. And it's great to be able to hear. I guess we meet with teams and we meet with your team regularly, but we don't often hear about individually your own journey at being at RMIT. Thanks for that.
Thanks.
And I imagine very enriching work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we'll probably hear more about that a little bit later in our episode today. Well, what about you, Katie? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I am one of the coordinators in the student welfare team, and I work part-time. So I job share with another coordinator named Alison, and together with Catherine, we look after our team of student welfare advisors. So we have 8 student welfare advisors. Some are part-time as well. And we coordinate the kind of day-to-day operations and service provision of the team. I've worked at RMIT in the student welfare and wellbeing role since 2011.
Wow.
Quite a long time as well. But I did do a little stint at the University of Melbourne in the disability team for a couple of years. But I came back to RMIT because I loved and missed RMIT too much. Yeah, it's amazing being back. I particularly love the dual sector of RMIT with the vocational combined with the higher education. It makes it really dynamic and diverse and interesting.
And many dimensions to your work, I imagine.
Yeah, just so cool and interesting meeting so many different students with their study disciplines, but also their backgrounds and their goals. So yeah, I work part-time because I have 2 young sons who are 3 and 5. Yep, and I'm originally from New Zealand, which you might have already picked up with my vowel sounds.
I think that's pretty cool. We like a bit of diversity, and Australia is about multiculturalism, and sounds like RMIT won out, having you back compared
I
to
hope-
Melbourne Uni.
I hope so. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Well, you guys have mentioned you are known as the student welfare team, and I know, having been here a while myself, it's changed names over the years. But for our listeners, who is or what is your team? Catherine?
So being the manager of student support is made up of the student welfare advisors that Katie will tell us more about. Also, there's student legal, so part-time lawyer who's available for free legal advice and appointments. And then I also manage a branch which is complex case management. When students in Melbourne or interstate overseas, when they have life circumstances that require lots of services and an extended type of assistance and lots of types of assistance, then complex case management means that teams of people from different services across the university come together and take action, and we share responsibility and help students through these often complex needs over time. So, for example, a student might be in hospital due to an accident, or they may have had a personal tragedy and they need lots of different actions over time to help them, because they can't focus on their study because life happens. Being able to work with academics who refer students, or teaching staff who refer students who are missing or they have a concern, but also other students and people in the community will contact student welfare or student support staff and let us know that they're worried, and student welfare advisors and other staff in support will follow up to make sure everyone's safe and well, and we offer what we can to help them.
Like a bit of a holistic level of care or support to students who are studying here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you guys mentioned you've got about 8 in your team, advisors. Is that right, Katie?
I believe it's 8. It could be 7, but I think it's 8 technically.
Thereabouts.
Yes.
And how do you guys support RMIT students?
So we provide practical advice and assistance to our current students, but also prospective students on a range of issues, but mostly those include finance, housing, general support, so navigating kind of RMIT administrative processes and policies, and also that crisis support, which Catherine mentioned. I'll talk in a bit more detail about each of those issues.
That would be great.
In terms of finance, we can provide financial assistance to students who are experiencing financial hardship. So that could include our Student Hardship Assistance Grant, which can be a cash grant or vouchers of up to $1,000 to help with essential living costs or study-related costs, such as technology or a laptop. And that's online application and evidence-based. We can also provide emergency assistance in the form of Coles and Mikey vouchers to students, as well as Prezi gift cards for living costs for students who need that urgent financial support. And that's appointment-based only. There's no need for any kind of application or supporting documents.
But they need to meet with you.
Yes, they do. And that's not only so that we can determine their eligibility, but also that we can offer extra support and referrals and options, whether it's through RMIT or through external community services. So we regularly assist students with Centrelink advice and guidance, so the student income support payments from Services Australia for eligible students.
I can imagine that can be such a minefield for people trying to navigate about Centrelink, so this is such invaluable support there or advice.
Yes, it can be, and it's so individual and case by case, depending on parental income or your study load and that sort of thing. So we do need to be mindful of that when we're talking to students, but we can definitely offer that kind of general advice around eligibility or how to submit a claim or how to appeal a Centrelink debt. We also work together with Fines Victoria to administer a scheme called the Work Development Permit Scheme, or WDP. And that scheme allows students with traffic fines and infringements to use their study attendance hours to work off those debts.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing.
That's really handy to know.
Yeah, so every hour of attendance, whether that's in person or online,
Uh-huh.
works off about $55 in fines.
Oh, wow.
So it doesn't take too long to kind of work off, a significant fine if you're studying for a semester or a year.
Yeah, and if you're not able to work full-time because you're engaged in full-time study, then that really helps make a difference. And with living costs increasing year after year, I can imagine that kind of also alleviates some stress or mitigates some stress for students.
Absolutely, and we don't want individuals to kind of leave those fines to accrue further penalties,
That's right.
So we try to kind of promote that scheme far and wide wherever possible. Student Connect do the bulk of talking to students about fees, but we can often talk to students about fee extensions or impacts of exceeding their VET student loan cap, for instance. So we talk to students about fees, and we provide budgeting and money management advice and referrals as well. And as I mentioned before, we're regularly referring to community services such as Ask Izzy or Red Cross for further emergency financial aid. So that's a big ticket item for our team, is the financial side of things. And now I'll talk about housing. So student welfare advisors can provide resources and advice to students who are looking for accommodation, so in line with their budget and preferences. So it could be the student apartment providers or the student hostels or share houses, homestay, that sort of thing. We can provide some general tenancy advice around rental agreements and disputes, but
fabulous.
Yes, we do regularly refer to student legal service for those tenancy issues too, just because our student lawyer is kind of specialised, especially if the tenancy issue, they can get quite complicated, and also you can be liable. If it goes to VCAT, you want to kind of have someone who knows the ins and outs of tenancy law. So we regularly refer to the student lawyer, student legal service for those tenancy issues. We also can provide short-term emergency accommodation for eligible students for 1 to 2 nights, sometimes longer, when they are unfortunately experiencing homelessness, or sometimes students have a short gap in between accommodation and they might not have any financial support available to cover that temporary period. So we can organise that at no cost to the student. So that's housing in a nutshell. And then Catherine touched on crisis support, but I'll just kind of break down what that might mean in terms of the different examples. And again, this is pretty much in every case we would be referring to other services such as RMIT counselling. But we might often be the first RMIT staff member that a student contacts if they find themselves unexpectedly homeless. That could be due to a relationship breakdown. They might have been kicked out of home by their parent. Sometimes we have students who are fleeing family or partner violence as well. So not only would we assist with the emergency accommodation and emergency financial assistance, but also refer to those appropriate teams like the Safer Community team for that support, and then help them with the study-related issues like special consideration, for example. We often do experience or have students drop in to see us who might be experiencing a mental health crisis, including suicidal thoughts or high levels of distress. So we do regularly refer to the RMIT counselling team during business hours. And after hours, there's the 24/7 mental health support that we can link students in with, and also the overseas international SOS and support services for our students who are based outside of Australia. We do regularly conduct welfare checks to students who have been reported missing. So that's if they haven't been in class for 2 weeks and their school contacts us. But sometimes third parties such as parents will contact our team as well because they're worried about their child. So we try to establish the students' welfare and contact them and hear from them, and then offer them relevant support services. We do also conduct that welfare type outreach to students who may have experienced some type of incident, so like a health emergency on campus. Unfortunately, we have assaults on campus or robberies. So we conduct those welfare checks and offer support and referrals. And at times, if we cannot locate students who are missing, we may need to escalate to Victoria Police. Doesn't happen that regularly, but every now and then, just so that we can establish their welfare.
It sounds like we have pastoral care. You know, when a student is enrolled into RMIT, it's RMIT's responsibility to ensure that we have that pastoral care to make sure that they're okay, they're safe. So hence the welfare check if they're not around on campus or in class for an extended amount of time, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's a duty of care, and it's also within the kind of RMIT policy in terms of the risk, and we do need to act quite quickly. So that's very kind of time sensitive and depends on the nature of the concern as well. We also provide kind of central outreach to student groups who may be affected by natural disasters or critical incidents that unfortunately occur either in their home country or in Australia. So, for example, the flooding recently in Australia, we have been contacting students and helping out financially, etc. And lots of working with other services, but I can kind of touch on that a bit later on if you like.
Yeah, sure. I'm hearing a lot of non-education support here, and it sounds like all of this is trying to ensure that they're looked after, they're taken care of, so that they can also optimise their chances of study whilst at RMIT.
Yes, absolutely. That kind of welfare, well-being side of things, but how it interacts with the study as well. So that's where it comes into the general kind of support that we provide. So if a student's impacted by health or bereavement or that sort of thing, we can help them navigate the special consideration process and what types of supporting documents they might need, as well as the fee remission under special circumstances process. So kind of guiding them through the administrative side of things, because that can be quite overwhelming at the best of times. And if you're already, under a bit of duress or under a bit of stress, then you might just be more inclined to not deal with it or bury your head in the sand. So we try to offer that guidance and that step-by-step approach. And that includes leave of absence and reduced study loads, in particular for international students, because they do need to provide that compassionate, compelling supporting documentation. Right. So we can help them identify, what might constitute supporting documents or what kind of grounds they may be able to establish, as well as appeals and complaints. But we'd regularly refer those sorts of issues to the student rights officers in the student union. But we're a good kind of starting point too. And as I said before, quite a lot of those processes are quite time sensitive, around census date. And so we do need to work with that in mind to make sure that students are putting in their applications on time, because it can have quite a knock-on effect in terms of their enrolment.
And some students aren't aware of that. And what you said earlier also about some of the reduced study load or a leave of absence for some of the international students, they may not have an awareness or understanding about that until they meet with you, and then you get to inform them of this.
Exactly. I think sometimes we take for granted the knowledge that we have about all of these processes just because it's our day-to-day, around special consideration and, census dates and fee dates and blah, blah, blah. But actually, if you don't know, you don't know. And so that's why it's really important to reach out.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add to that, Catherine?
Well, I was thinking as Katie was talking about the idea that all support services uphold, which is we recognise that we're a big institution, so come talk to us. And some services are not student facing, such as some of the administrative services. The most important thing is, and just thinking about the different types of inquiries that we get, Katie mentioned the library, and one that was received pretty recently by me was someone passed on an inquiry from a student because they'd made a booking with a library assistant and they hadn't heard back. And so I reached out to the library. It's all those little opportunities and the big things that we get to assist students with, and we get to link them into the network of RMIT, and student welfare do an incredible job of linking all the services together for the students, in addition to providing that direct assistance and helping the student navigate the university, understand their options and their rights and responsibilities across a wide range of issues.
You guys must have pages and pages of manuals memorized or something. I'm just imagining how you just flick through, okay, here's the page about accommodation, here's the manual page for financial assistance for students. The different hats you put on, it's amazing.
Our library of resources is absolutely massive.
Yeah,
So
and
it's an ongoing,
I was going to
ongoing
say, yeah, you have to
project.
update it all the time, I imagine, revise it constantly.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
team are great at it because they see the value in it. Keeping it
Mm,
updated means next time you call on it, it's there for you to use.
very true. Having spoken about the extensive support you guys provide, so what would you say are the common inquiries you guys tend to get?
I think our top three across the board, number one is definitely financial assistance, and in particular student hardship assistance.
Makes sense.
Number two, especially towards the end of semesters, is special consideration.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And then number three is kind of that umbrella enrollment matters term. So that could be leave of absence, dropping courses, cancelling enrollment,
Which is
appeal
probably
of.
occurring throughout the semesters.
Exactly, yeah, it depends on the student life cycle. So at the moment, our start of semester, January going into February, our Student Connect team are pretty busy with all of those enrolment queries.
Yes.
And then it gets to March, closer to census date, and that's when we get quite busy because things start to maybe go wrong for students, or they're not sure if they want to keep studying, and that's when our kind of peaks start happening.
And that's another reason why it's important for students to reach out, and a lot of the work that student welfare does and the other services is the students will ask a question or have a particular need, and when talking to a student welfare advisor, the conversation continues and advice is provided, and that launches a whole new discussion because you don't know what you don't know, and also to have the opportunity to discuss the different priorities. So it's really common for students to come in and ask a simple question or ask a big question, and lots falls out of that discussion. And it's also in recognition that people have lots of stuff going on that's really sensitive for them. So to create the opportunity to provide services to students, provide referrals, and let them know that we can help, and how that we can help, and let the students do what they want to do in the order which they want to do it, and provide the information and options so they can make informed choices that are best for them.
And I think when I first started, what I learned about student support or welfare was that this becomes a one-stop shop, and then it, like you said, Catherine, it leads them to then other avenues of support or liaising with perhaps other departments within the university to get them the right support or point them in the right direction. So very extensive indeed. Here's a different question then. What would you say has been the most left field inquiry you guys have ever received?
So a few years ago now, probably actually almost a decade ago, when I was quite new in the team, a student dropped in person to ask for help to fix their broken watch, which I
That's
thought
quite
was
random.
It was very random, but also very sweet. And we also had another interesting one a few years ago of a student wanting to get help to set up their own cupcake business on campus. Yeah.
Lovely.
I don't know if it ever got off the ground, but apparently their cupcakes were amazing. So those two, they were quite lovely because they're quite different compared to the usual types of questions we get. So they were pretty left field.
Yes.
But we were happy to talk about them both.
What did you do with the watch inquiry?
Well, I had a look at the watch, and I confirmed that yes, the battery had stopped. And I asked where they lived, and I recommended that they look up the closest watch repairs that are often in malls or Melbourne Central, and that they can go get a new battery for their watch. And they were quite happy with that and tottled off.
And it sounds like, Katie, you might just be pseudo watch repairer for the students. I think that's quite lovely. It's really taking that one-stop shop to the literal sense.
Yes, well, we're not going to say, sorry, we can't help you, off you go, regardless of the question. You know, if it's not us, we'll be pointing them in the right direction. We're just happy that people are coming through the door or reaching out.
Yeah, some of the loveliest reflections from the team are about when they see students who have come back to talk about the impact that they've had but also to talk about just the little stuff, the everyday stuff that's bothering them, having a bad day and having someone to tell about that bad day, and knowing that student welfare are around to have those conversations too.
I can imagine the space that you guys provide will become also a bit of a sounding board to these students, especially ones who might have gone through some hardship or some stress, whether it's in personal lives, and you might be the first point of call that they really had the space to sit down and actually just unpack some things. We might cover this a little bit later in our conversation, but I know that sometimes, before they see us in the counselling service, they speak to you guys, they speak to people in your team, and you'll get pretty much the bulk of it first, and they often feel really, really appreciative and grateful for having that space to be able to do that with you.
Yeah.
So what do you wish everyone to know about your work and or your service?
I think it is reinforcing what we've been saying, is that I wish that everyone knew that they could come in at any time about anything, whether it's small or big or complicated, and that it will be treated confidentially and without judgment. We're a safe space, and I recognise that when things aren't going well for you, for a person, that it can be difficult to take that first step. And it's important to recognise that and provide that kind of empathy and listening. Once students have spoken to us or linked in with our services and support, they often say, like, I've heard it so many times, I wish that I'd known about your service earlier. Like, they're about to finish their studies and they're like, wow, I would have linked in with you like at the start of my studies if I'd known.
That would have been me at uni.
Well, likewise.
Known.
Yeah,
likewise.
Me too.
Isn't it funny? Because you just get wrapped up in the lectures and the assessment. And I remember just living off frozen veg for a week because I was so broke, and I could have probably gone to the equivalent of student services in New Zealand and said, do you have any financial assistance? So, I don't discount that it can be difficult to ask for help, but I really reinforce that please come in and see us. And if it's not us that can help directly, as we've been saying, we're a great kind of central point of contact that can really provide those holistic referrals and next steps and guidance. And we're often available like on that particular day. There's not a long wait period to see us as well.
Yeah, I'd build on that, completely agree. And I'd build on that to your example, Katie, of eating frozen veg for when you could have got assistance, that I'd like everybody to know that the word crisis and emergency is a subjective one, it's a personal one, and often students who are in the most need will elect to not ask for assistance or will decline our offers of assistance and tell us, oh, I can manage, or I'm probably not in as much of an emergency as other people. So we're here to help, and like Katie said, no judgment. And part of that is it's about helping, assisting and providing what we can so that people have a good quality of life, and doing what we can, supporting as best we can as a university so students can have the best quality of life and reach their potential in studies. An emergency is your emergency. There's no definition. Come and ask us. You don't have to be in an emergency, and if you are, doubly so, come and see us.
Yeah, and as Katie was saying before, there's probably some same day contact and or appointments available to speak to one of the advisors. But if not, at the very least, someone at Connect, someone at RMIT Connect, who can then sort of work out where to from there. And so it sounds like what you guys are really hoping to let people know is there is the service. It's no question or inquiry is too small or too insignificant or too non-urgent. Just pop in, make an appointment or ask and check it out, and then go from there. There'll be options, and the advisors will be there to talk about some options with whatever you're presenting. So great tip for listeners. Well, we've talked about so far your work and your contact with students and the student-facing aspect of it. Well, I'm curious also, though, do you guys have much to do with the academic staff or teaching staff or other staff at the university?
Yes, absolutely. So particularly with other support services. We work very closely with counselling and equitable learning services and the Ngara Willem Centre for our Indigenous students, chaplaincy, student legal service. But we do regularly liaise with teaching and professional staff in the schools and colleges too, particularly if a student has explained their circumstances in a bit of detail and it might be sensitive or something's happening, and that student may require a bit of extra help in communicating their academic issue alongside those personal issues. So we're not wanting to just bounce and flick the student off to go and start that whole story again with another member of staff. So we're kind of wanting to bridge those inquiries and give that helping hand. And every now and then, we will be talking to the academic staff on behalf of the student with their permission to get the best outcomes.
Which I can imagine alleviates a fair bit of stress and or stigma as well. I know some students I've worked with, they're not comfortable reaching out to their teachers. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to start it. Or they feel like they shouldn't annoy them or bother them, it's troublesome, etc. And this really normalizes actually it's okay to reach out to your teachers.
Absolutely. And the preference is for the student to make contact if they feel comfortable to do so, because it's empowering, and the teaching staff are available to assist with those kind of academic side of things. But every now and then it may be a bit overwhelming, or perhaps the ins and outs of what we're requesting is a bit complicated. And so we know the language that needs to be used, and also the teaching staff might see that it's coming from student welfare and support, and it might pop up and be on their radar a bit more quickly as well.
And I can add too that all support services participate with other areas of the university for procedural improvements. Depending on the student experience of different policies, a bunch of us will get together and look at what is the student experience. For example, with fee extensions, that's a huge issue for students when they're unable to meet their fee payment responsibilities and they have personal circumstances, and the policy is quite clear. And the experience of students applying for a fee extension and the information they receive in response and what that looks in the background, and that has been an ongoing project between the financial group of RMIT and the enrolment area, Student Connect, Student Support as one example. And there are other ongoing projects, one of which are the projects associated with the Mental Wellbeing Strategic Action Plan. So where there's the whole of university approach to doing better and staff upskilling and students having the opportunity to upskill, and us all as a university community working together for collective positive outcomes. So the project work is ongoing and really exciting. Some is ad hoc, some of it is strategic, and it certainly keeps the blood pumping and keeps the feedback being put into action.
Yeah, it's great to hear. I think overall, my experience with RMIT has been very student conscious, and there's parts of it where student experience has been at the forefront of the strategic plan, and on the other hand, also staff at the forefront of strategic plan. And it's great to hear that there are those ongoing projects, so that, you want to make sure that student experience is at the optimal, but at the same time, there's also variety or stimulating work for our staff as well. Also, having said that, we also have the connectivity across the different networks, different services and different departments, so that we're not working in silos. It sounds like you don't want students feeling like they're only dealing with one part of the university when they can be linked in other ways to other parts of the university to really optimize their study time here.
Yeah, and we're part of various working groups. There's dozens of working groups, and it's just a critical opportunity to have those discussions and talk about the everyday business as usual, and to talk about trends and how we can work together to improve the student experience and to engage in those big projects that change the landscape of the student experience.
Very enriching work. Again, it sounds like there's more than just student work. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes to make all this happen.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, here's $1 million question. How do the students get in touch with your team?
I can answer that one. Probably our preference is, so that we can have that really good one-on-one conversation, is for students to book a phone appointment or a face-to-face appointment for a time that suits them, Monday to Friday. So our face-to-face appointments are at the City campus at the moment, and students can book that online through the RMIT Student Connect portal.
Right.
We often have appointments available on the same day, which I mentioned before. We can also have phone appointments with students based overseas, bearing in mind the international time zones. And students can also, they might be awake at 2 a.m. thinking about something, and they're very welcome to submit a written portal inquiry to our team to kind of get things started.
It's sort of like a chat, is that right? Not in real time.
No, so there's web chat with Student Connect, and sometimes that eventuates into a student welfare referral from the web chat staff. But no, it's more like you submit your portal inquiry, and it gets you can choose the drop down of the nature of your issue, and it's like wellbeing and housing, or wellbeing financial assistance, and then the student has the opportunity to write a bit of a summary of their circumstances. Often it will lead on that we would recommend an appointment, just so that we can discuss in more detail and also discuss the myriad of options. That is an option available. And we do also have a drop-in service. So students can drop into the City campus to see an advisor during business hours, depending on availability, if they're not in appointments already.
And I recall you saying, Katie, earlier that it's a confidential conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Confidential, one-on-one. Sometimes when we have phone appointments, we can ask if they want us to stop the recording of the transcript if it is very sensitive. And so we give the student the opportunity to make that call if they want to. Completely confidential, unless the student's at risk of themselves or of others. That's when we might breach it.
Yeah, hopefully that also kind of reassures our students that whoever they're talking to in terms of the advisor on the other end, that their information and things that they want to unpack are held in that space, and unless with their permission, it doesn't go anywhere.
That's right. And all of our work notes are secure and confidential, within our own team. Nobody else can see those at the university.
Yeah, great. Well, I've heard that you both have been working at RMIT for a long time, long-timers. What do you find rewarding in what you do?
Well, I find a bunch of things really rewarding, but I guess the biggest reward is being able to help students who are facing those kind of significant barriers or real disadvantage, and helping them overcome those hurdles to be able to remain and study. And it's wonderful when we receive, often we don't hear from the student again, but it's wonderful when we do receive that feedback that the financial grant that we provided or the emergency accommodation that we helped with was the turning point in terms of them kind of being able to get back on track and get back into their studies. I really find it rewarding speaking with students. I get to learn new things myself. It's such a human role.
Yeah.
And it's endlessly rewarding in that regard, in terms of being curious about your fellow humans. And just the university landscape is such a dynamic and diverse environment that you do get to speak to just such a wonderful range of people. It's challenging in terms of the problem solving, but that's also rewarding as well, because you're thinking on your feet. And I always like to say, I'll just finish with this, that you never quite know what's going to pop up on a given day. It's not just the same old thing. It can be such a range of things that pop up, and some of it can be quite urgent and maybe a bit full on, and other times someone pops in and needs their watch fixed. So it's very interesting in that regard, and it's amazing, and I'm very grateful to be doing this job.
So it sounds like no two questions, no two queries are the same.
Absolutely not. And that's kind of a wonderful thing as well.
Yeah.
And again, I'll just say it again, really value that students take the time to share their stories with us.
Yeah. And they feel safe with you guys too.
Yes.
I mirror everything Katie's said, and I have huge gratitude that I exercise regularly, and hopefully I tell the team often enough how much I'm just amazed at what they do day in and day out, and the snap decisions that they make that's informed by expertise and professionalism and instinct, and as a result of collaborating with one another and other colleagues. And I take great pride in the fact that I can be part of many teams who assist students, particularly when they're going through the hardest things in their life, and to have the opportunity to learn from my colleagues, to have the opportunity to work with people who are incredibly diverse in their life experience, and then to meet students who are unique, courageous, amazing, achieving people in their industry and in their own lives. And so no 2 days are the same, and it's always going to be challenging, and that's why I'm still in the job and made a career out of helping people.
It sounds so rewarding, and it sounds so one conversation with you guys or your team can make such a difference. So I hope listeners will take note of this and get in contact with student welfare when they need to, even dropping in to check out where you guys are located in the city campus. It's helpful to know where you are.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
Honestly, hats off to you and your team, Catherine, for the enormity of the work and support you cover and provide to our students. I haven't said it before, I think you guys are the fairy godparents to many who study here, and you do such invaluable work. I mean, my takeaway from today is to get in touch if I ever need help, if I ever have a query, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant, no matter how non-urgent it might feel. It sounds like you guys can help problem solve that through, and then can also point us in that direction or give us options to discuss further. Again, I want to stress that with student welfare, it is a confidential conversation, and a world of difference of a conversation something like this can make. So I thank you both, Catherine and Katie, for coming along today to talk about student welfare. This would be most crucial information for those starting uni this year, or even those unfamiliar with any of the student support services. I look forward to catching you both around.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.
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 Thanks for joining us today on the Counselling Armchair. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned a useful thing or two. Have a great week, and just remember that life can be amazing. See you next time.
Isn't life so amazing? Sometimes it can get crazy, but hey, that's okay. We've got another day to make mistakes and say sorry. There's no sense in our worry, 'cause all we can do is try our best to make it through.